Hello and welcome to this webinar, Actions and Recommendations, Creating a Joint Vision for Positive Energy Districts, organized by the Smart Cities Information System. My name is Cyril Jobin. I work for VITO Energyville in Belgium, and I have the pleasure to host this session for today. Before we get started, I would like to briefly mention some housekeeping rules. All attendees and speakers are muted by default. Questions can be asked either by raising your hand during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar or anytime by using the chat box on the GoToWebinar control panel. In case we are not able to answer all your questions during this webinar, we will get back to you via email. This webinar will be recorded and will be made available online after the event. So today we will be talking about positive energy districts. With the Smart Cities Information System, we collect and exchange data, experiences, and know-how from the EU-supported smart city community in the fields of energy, mobility, and ICT. The more recent Lighthouse projects have to develop positive energy districts and are faced with several challenges to put this into practice. Positive energy districts are an important concept in both the European Commission's Smart City and Communities Programme and the Strategic Energy Technology Plan. In this framework, we will address during this webinar the definition of positive energy districts and the certification work, as well as challenges and barriers to building PEDs on the ground. We will start with 5 pitches given by our speakers. Then we will split the group so that everyone can join one of the breakout rooms for about 20 minutes. At the end, we hope to be able to answer some questions from the public as well. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. Thank you all for being here. Vandevyvere is a project manager and senior researcher in the unit Smart Energy and Built Environment at VITO, Energyville in Belgium. He has both scientific and practical experience in the architecture and construction environment. He is regularly solicited as an expert panel member in the field of sustainable urban development, and today he will give an overview on PED definitions and approaches. Then we have Christoph Gollner. He works for the Austrian Research Promotion Agency, FFG. He is a graduate engineer in spatial and urban planning and has previously been working for the Austrian Academy of Sciences and in urban renewal for the city of Vienna. Currently, he is program manager for the SET Action Plan 3.2, the program on positive energy districts and neighborhoods for sustainable urban development for GPI Urban Europe, and that's since 2018. He will give an update on the PED framework development. Rudy Roth is the local project coordinator for the Atelier project in the city of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Previously, he has worked for over 30 years as an energy consultant for DNVGL. He was also the coordinator of the 3 Concerto and energy efficiency of buildings projects. Since 2019, he is involved in the Lighthouse project Atelier for the municipality of Amsterdam. He will give us some insight in the challenges they face in the local context. Marit Mirstad is a project manager for regulation of energy systems for the Positive City Exchange project in the city of Trondheim in Norway, where she has been working for almost 10 years. Klaus Livik is a chief strategist at Powell. He is working with international business development for Powell Solutions. He is specialized in smart metering, smart grids, and hydropower generation. Marit and Klaus will speak about how the regulation of the energy market can be shaped from a barrier to an enabler for positive energy blocks. And finally, Samuli Irina is a project manager at the city of Oulu in Finland. He has a background in energy issues. His previous experience is mainly related to large-scale wood energy. Currently, he is working on system design, including different energy sources. He will present some aspects from the Making City project in Oulu. As you can see, we have 6 very interesting speakers for today who will definitely share some valuable insights with us. Since we have a very strict schedule today, I would like to remind all speakers to limit their pitch to a maximum of 10 minutes. That would be very much appreciated. And if during one of the pitches there would be a question, don't hesitate to write them in the chat box. So the first pitch of today will be brought by Vandevyvere from Energyville VITO. You will get mouse control in a few seconds. Han, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Jelle. If everything goes fine, I shall now be visible and heard. So I'll give a kind of general introduction on today's theme. And just to situate a bit the history of the PED movement, I will say for the moment. Some of the origins are with the Strategic Energy Technology Plan of the European Commission. This is a document from 2018 where there was an engagement in Action 3.2 to realize 100 PEDs in Europe by 2025. So PEDs, positive energy districts, we will very soon dig a little bit into the definition as it is today, and then Christoph Gollner will go much deeper into the framework. But the set plan is basically at the origin of the efforts that are going on. Meanwhile, there was need for a better definition of what makes a PED and what does not make a PED, and how far is the scope of a PED going. The basic concept is very simple, but if you go to look a bit further, then you see that the devil is in the details. And so the GPI Urban Europe and ERA Joint Program Smart Cities and Communities have set out to work on a definition in collaboration with input from member states. And the current definition as it is there, and I will just permit myself to read it because it's very condensed and it's got a lot of elements. So positive energy districts are energy efficient and energy flexible urban areas or groups of connected buildings which produce net zero greenhouse gas emissions and actively manage an annual local or regional surplus production of renewable energy. They require integration of different systems and infrastructures and interaction between buildings, the users, and the regional energy, mobility, and ICT systems, while securing the energy supply and a good life for all in line with social, economic, and environmental sustainability. Now, all of these specifications are pretty important. For example, you see that a regional surplus is coming in, and we do have reasons for that. So any clause which is in here has a specific background, and I will lift some of the elements that are behind all those clauses. You can find the white paper and an overview booklet with current PED projects or PED-like projects on the link that you find there. Meanwhile, this thing is taking some movement, and so basically there was a European initiative. Now we see that the International Energy Agency has created a new annex on positive energy districts, and of course their scope will be much wider than just the specific European context. Meanwhile, for example, the Smart City Marketplace, which is a platform also set up by the Commission to enhance replication and take-up of smart city solutions, has an action cluster on sustainable districts and built environment, which has now recently launched an initiative on PEBs, positive energy blocks. This has a historical reason because positive energy blocks were the phase before the PEDs in the Lighthouse calls of the Commission, where groups of buildings were required to be positive energy on an annual basis. And also here you find the links to those initiatives. Now we'll be focusing on a European context, and evidently PEDs in Europe will basically most of the time be urban retrofit projects, because new build is a very small share of the volume of buildings that is in circulation in Europe, and there is a huge retrofit challenge for upgrading the built environment, for preparing it for the energy transition, which also has led to the fact that in the European Green Deal, one of the pillars of it is the renovation wave. And so definitely PEDs will play an important role in this renovation wave. However, PEDs are not islands, and that I think is one of the first major things that we need to keep in mind. Actually, if you look to the energy puzzle and you look to the thermal pillar and the electrical pillar and how to solve the energy puzzle when you want to go to 100% renewable and decarbonized energy sources, then very soon you come to the insight that it's not at the building level, it's not at the district level, but actually it's the regional context that will define what are the sources available, what are the strategies to increase energy efficiency, what are the flexibility opportunities. And so those PEDs will always have to be integrated in the city and regional system, and also they will virtually always exchange energy and services related to energy with the wider environment. And so it's very important to keep in mind that basically we go from positive energy buildings over blocks, over districts to finally cities and regions. And that's the ultimate goal. Just to give you an example, this is a pilot PED case in Limerick, which is part of the Positive City Exchange project. We are here in a Georgian historic quarter where, for example, it is not so easy to drastically increase the energy efficiency of the buildings because you cannot insulate them from the exterior, and there are other rules on conservation of monuments and the like. So the challenge is to bring this to another level of energy performance. And so in Limerick, people on the pilot set out to find renewable sources. And the consequence of this search was that the ideal feeding source for this PED system was to be found about 1 to 2 kilometers further in the Shannon River. So here on the map down, you see the buildings that are part of the PED, and you see already that they are dispersed over the district, that not all buildings in the district are in for the moment. And you see also that this dam, which will get some turbines in the water, is actually an energy provider for the PED, while it is quite outside the geographical city area that is doing the project. So this brings already a kind of preview of what kind of challenges that will come back all the time when we really try to fix PEDs on the ground in an existing urban area. Okay, somewhere I have lost the control. Okay, there we go. That's back. So as I said, there come some challenges on how we can describe those PEDs. And one of the things we have been working on lately is what are the functional boundaries and how would you eventually be able to certify, because guess that real estate developers and other actors will be happy to really certify the fact that they have been realizing a PED. So we can, of course, we can look at the geographical boundaries, which is the intuitive way of setting a boundary about around an intervention area. But when you start to look to grids, electricity grids, heating grids, then there might be functional boundaries, which is the network behind the substation or the part of a network that is servicing the PED area, but that is part of a larger district heating and cooling system. So functional boundaries need not necessarily to coincide completely with geographical boundaries. And then maybe we have other production capacity that we want to use, and that comes from another place, like the example we just showed in Limerick. As far as the PED owners or PED participants are owner or exploiting the energy production outside the territory, we can say that production is still in the virtual boundary. And this gives rise to a first assessment of how different PED could look like. We're not sure that this is going to be in a definition, but it helps to sort out ideas and to settle challenges that must be solved in the framework. So you can go from completely autonomous at any point in time to the most logical setup, which is the situation where you have more energy production than you use, but you are in continuous exchange with the hinterland, with the city, with the region, for reasons of flexibility and balancing grids. You may have a virtual PED because you are resourcing energy from your assets outside your geographical boundary, or maybe you are not yet there and you will import green energy, buy green energy, at least to be in a decarbonized functioning mode. So still some questions stay there because, for example, how much of the mobility energy and especially the electric mobility energy shall we include in the balance of the PED? That are things that are not yet solved. I'm coming to my last slide. If the arrows want to work, and okay, thank you. So what have we seen as main challenges? And the next speakers will for sure give quite some examples on that. Regulatory frameworks, the need for setting up legal sandboxes because regulation, especially electricity market regulation, is not prepared for doing those PEDs. Cities are suspicious of vendor lock-in, so interoperability and open access, open standards are extremely important in smart grids in particular. We need a lot of good planners and a lot of increased capacity at all levels in city administration with planners, engineers, because we are really planning for change, and the integrated solutions are the best solutions, and they need a lot of talent and a lot of good planners. We see that GDPR, as usual, is giving us some concerns because we can have a lot of added value if we work with certain data, but we need to be able to explore them and use them. Financing, complex projects need complex financing structures. So it's a whole challenge to find out what are the good business model and who has the cost and the benefits and what's the fair share of cost and benefits over the different actors, especially in long-term project, because these are not things that win themselves back on short term. And then the last thing is that we need really cross-sectoral work on all levels, especially also in city administrations, in order to realize those integrated PEDs. I'll keep it for here, and maybe I can hand over to Jelle or Christophe.
Thank you, Han, for this status update and the insights you provided on the PED definition approaches, and that you touched upon some challenges we are facing. I would now like to give the floor to Christophe Gulnur from the Austrian Research Promotion Agency, FFG. Christophe, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I don't know, my camera doesn't seem to work, but I hope you can do without seeing me. I don't know what to do right now.
We can hear you at least.
You can hear me, that's the most important thing, yeah. So, thank you very much. So I have the mouse rights already. Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, Han, for the very good introduction. My name is Christoph Gollner. I'm program manager for the PED program in the framework of the Set Plan Action 3.2. And what we're trying to do is, and Han was also already referring to that, a proper framework of defining a positive energy district that is suitable to be applied for different regional contexts, different legal contexts across Europe or even globally. There is a clear vision of clear mission of the Set Plan Action 3.2 PED program, namely to have 100 positive energy districts in Europe by 2025, and as Han already mentioned, the important connection with the energy system. So the primary goal is not to create autonomous districts, but to create a sustainable energy development in Europe in general, and positive energy districts serving as a tool towards that direction. The whole thing, and I'm working for JPR Urban Europe, is very much embedded in the idea of having positive energy districts, energy action, climate action included, integrated into holistic urban strategies. So the urban aspect needs to be considered in all aspects, and so to say, the softer goals are always by means of developing positive energy districts, also creating livable, sustainable, inclusive urban neighborhoods, high quality urban neighborhoods that are fit to meet the challenges of the 21st century. PEDs as part of holistic urban strategies, contributing to climate action and energy transition, aligning different approaches and diverse regional preconditions, and support for cities as the key problem owners. Hanno already also said there has been a white paper issued on the PED reference frameworks with some key lessons learned from a national consultation that took place on the first version of the reference framework, and you can download it, this white paper, on under this link. The main aspects of this, besides the definition that came out of it, and Han was already going through it, and I won't do that again. The main aspects of it is focusing in the first place not so much on the calculation exercise, but to focus on the optimization of the three main functions of the energy system, namely the energy efficiency function, the energy production function, and the energy flexibility function. And by optimization of these three functions, achieving results towards both climate neutrality and energy surplus, by taking into account the guiding principles of quality of life, inclusiveness, with a special focus on affordability and prevention of energy poverty, sustainability, resilience, and security of energy supply, and by involving all relevant stakeholders and actors into the process. Of course, also including ICT and data management, and aiming at the integration of energy and urban planning. So the whole framework has this general idea of creating a transnational consensus, what we're actually talking about. There are technological aspects that clearly have to be further defined, but to create a consensus on the idea that positive energy districts are a tool of sustainable urban development in general, of achieving climate and energy targets, that should be represented through this framework. We created that definition, and here again is the steps of this operationalization process or roadmap. There was the first version of this framework last one year ago. Then there was a national consultation process, resulting in the white paper. And we are now starting, or we have been starting, amidst the COVID-19 crisis, an operationalization process that had to start mostly online, of course. That again should feed into the call agenda we are doing. Remind you, we are a research and innovation program, a transnational research and innovation program, and in the end contribute and make sure that we achieve the mission of 100 positive energy districts within the regional energy system. This operationalization process Okay, sorry for that. There were some highlights from the consultation that we are going to get deeper in this operationalization process. I'm not going through all the bullet points, but we kind of clustered it into 4 main areas that we want to go deeper with the stakeholders. That is, the first one is preparing the energy system for PEDs. Then again, the whole aspect of integrated urban planning, the very important aspect of governance and developing positive energy districts for people. And as a follow-up step, preparing the mainstreaming and the replication for developing positive energy districts on a large scale, which is, of course, the ambition of 100 positive energy districts. And I'd like to mention here that we would really like to create, or that one of the aim of creating this framework is to enable also not the usual suspects of cities, as much as we appreciate them, to participate in the whole process, but also focusing on smaller and middle-sized cities in Europe to be able to be part of that process. For that operationalization, we developed a scheme where we focus on 3 main stakeholder groups. That is the cities themselves. We have created a PED city panel in the program as some kind of advisory board, but we would also like to include more cities to discuss the different topics, to get deeper into the different topics, and kind of finding localized strategies. As a second stakeholder group, the utilities as key providers, key problem owners for developing positive energy district, and as a third group, the real estate industry. All of these 3 kind of putting money on the table, enabling through planning and implementation processes the whole ambition of positive energy districts. We have created 3 tracks of operationalization for now, in a series of webinars and online workshops, hopefully soon again in a physical setting also. That is an intense aligning and cooperation and coordination with other initiatives, as I put it. Different set plan actions. There is a PED stakeholder group, the Annex 83 of the International Energy Agency, EIP, SCC, Lighthouse Cities, Cost Action, Mission Innovation, Mission on Carbon Neutral Cities. There are a lot of initiatives already going on, and we need to make sure that we go in the same direction and create synergies between these initiatives. Track 2, a webinar series on national and transnational programs of how to involve cities. We started with Viable Cities of Sweden and the natural gas-free neighborhoods program in the Netherlands, and further webinars will follow. And then again, this topic-focused exchange with the above-mentioned stakeholder groups. So that is basically it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Christoph, for your update and comments on the PED framework development. Next, we will get insights in the practical experiences from 3 Lighthouse projects, Atelier, Making City, and Positive City Exchange. I would like to invite Rudy Roth from the Municipality of Amsterdam to tell us more about the experiences from the Atelier project. Rudy, the floor is yours.
Hello. I just had to discuss with my home people to be a little bit quiet. Okay. My name is Rudy Roth, and currently I'm working with the City of Amsterdam for the Atelier project. Well, the introductions by Han and Christoph already touched upon a number of subjects that we are also facing in our current project, which let me see. I have the mouse. Let me click. There it goes. In my 10 minutes, a summary of what I will talk about is shown on the slide. A short word about the project, the local challenges, something that is particular to our project, a methodology that we try to develop for local innovation, a case study in that respect, and how we look forward to even beyond the project. Does it continue? Yeah. Atelier in short. Atelier was a project in response to the last call that was last year in 2019. We started November last year. Main target, the development and demonstration of positive energy districts. We have 2 demo cities in Amsterdam and Bilbao in Spain, and 6 fellow cities, more in the eastern part of Europe, and 1 in Portugal. There are many things to say about the project, but I will focus here on the challenges to the PED development and the innovation ateliers as a vehicle for sustainable innovation that we use in the project, and based on positive experience with something similar in the ruggedized project by one of our partners. About these local challenges, I mean, this is a mix of common city challenges in terms of urban development and the challenges related to a positive energy district. Of course, in what I have listed here as the competing priorities, low carbon, clean air, safety, can also be, I had to expand that also to public health, economy, relating to the what Christoph said about the general thing is, of course, that you want to have a livable, sustainable, pleasant city. Otherwise, nobody wants to live there. But even in the environmental area, there is this competition on low, let's say, energy neutrality, but also clean air and safety, for example. Particular to cities is the space limitations that touches upon the element of where to put your boundaries when it comes to a positive energy district. Many stakeholders, it's well known, but we want to address especially that element in our innovation ateliers to ensure that all people, all sectors involved in the development, that they are included to come up with common solutions that are accepted by everybody. Also important for the city is to, of course, to let's say convince or get the people, the inhabitants embrace the developments, is that of climate justice. If maybe renewable or our positive energy neighborhoods are at some point in time more expensive than the current situation, then we should not be hampered by the fact that people are against it because they cannot afford it. So the city is really working on, or are working on, schemes for compensation if any measures that are being taken would affect the less well-off people. And then, of course, a challenge in any place, I think it is the regulations related to energy are originating from times with a different scheme, with much more central energy production and not tailored to energy exchange and distributed energy. So what is this innovation atelier about? It is a concept which was developed by our partner TNO in the Netherlands, also active in the project of Ruggedized. They have brought in a way of working, they bring all the stakeholders together to discuss solutions that fulfill the requirements for the energy transition, in our case for a positive energy district, and have them aligned with the general city requirements. But it is more a process tool rather than a technical measure. So it is we are carefully designing a process that includes the right people that can contribute to solutions and have a say in it, both for the long term, but also for specific challenges in the project at hand. After our project, we would like that this idea of innovation ateliers is sustainable and self-supporting, so that future generations will also benefit from it. Of course, we are only in the first, let's say, we have just finished a half year of our project and are now setting up these innovation ateliers. As I said, it is also really targeting specific issues in our project. A little bit in general about this atelier, we embrace the idea of the quadruple helix, where both public authorities, industry, academia, and citizens are working together to find the solutions that we need. In our case, we need in the Atelier project more renewable energy than can be produced on the buildings that are included. We have seen that already in the presentation of Han, and also from Christoph. Let's say a dam that is outside the actual inhabited area could provide local energy. In our case, we are looking for about the equivalent of a 400 kilowatt PV. And the constraints in the city are space limitations. But the good thing is that both the city authorities and property developers, they really want to have it realized. We want to create benefits for the inhabitants. And the challenge is, in this case, to solve the puzzle for the particular Atelier project and learn from the process to apply it also in other cases. My personal opinion is that when it comes to this positive energy district, that the first target should be to find solutions to the energy balance inside the district itself, because any solution that you create depending on energy generation outside the district will also affect the possibilities of other districts to do the same. So to give you an opinion, an impression, this 400 kilowatt PV that is needed outside is about, let's say, 30 to 40% of all the energy that is actually needed. So the 60 to 70% that is needed is generated inside the district. And this is what we cannot accommodate. Of course, the denser the city and maybe the higher the buildings, when you have problems with surface area for PV or other means of local renewable energy generation, the denser, the more difficult.
Rudy, just to mention that you have 2 minutes left.
Yeah, I'm almost finished. As an example, I show here again on this slide, one of the last slides, the four in the corners, the four stakeholder groups, and from left to right you see 4 tracks where we consider innovation is needed. So it's more technical oriented, it's more about governance and planning and law, finance, and data and privacy issues. I won't go into the details of this one because this is maybe for your information if you have a printout or a file that you can look at it later, but it explains the different stages of the development of the ateliers. Stage 1, 2, and 3 are for the development of it inside the project, and later we hope that it is a replicable concept for others too. So that was it, Jelle.
Thank you very much, Rudy, for sharing with us the challenges and methodologies applied in the Atelier project and providing us an example of a challenge you are facing. I would now like to invite Marit Mirstad from the city of Trondheim and Klaus Livik from Powell to tell us more about the experiences from the Positive City Exchange project and the role the regulation of the energy market can play. Marit and Klaus, you have the floor.
Thank you. The 10 minutes pitch here will have as a background what we have done so far in the City Exchange project dealing with regulation especially. And we named the presentation From Barrier to Enabler, or PED. It's a small title, but it's a huge challenge, in fact, to look closer into this. And yeah, next slide. There, okay, there it is. Yeah. So, because regulation is very crucial when it comes to the incentives for the energy transition in general, and a big goal is to see how it could come up with a regulation which is some kind of a win-win between the regulatory body and, in fact, also the goal for setting up a PED. And we have done some work in City Exchange so far, where we have come up with an example for how to make regulation in line with energy transition goals. And the challenge here is, in fact, that to come up with regulations that works for a PED, you have to address and talk with several regulatory bodies. They have unclear incentives and have lack of PED process understanding as a whole. And we have also seen that the regulatory framework, what we have seen it all over Europe, it is quite static. And it's not created to serve and support transitions. That's a major finding so far.
So, Positive City Exchange, at a glance, we are 2 leading cities, Trondheim in Norway and Limerick in, yeah, there you can see me, fine. Trondheim in Norway and Limerick in Ireland. And then we have 5 follower cities, and that is Alba Iulia in Romania, Sestao in Spain, Smolyan in Bulgaria, and Písek in Czech Republic, and Boru in Estonia. And the University NTNU in Trondheim is leading and coordinating the whole process for us. And we have 30 million euros when it comes to the project altogether. And we started 1st of November 2018, and it goes all the way to 2023. So, so here are our findings, and then you can see on our right-hand side, this is the demonstration area in Trondheim, and you can show with the arrow across the demonstrations areas.
It's one here in Sluppen. It's the university campus, and it's the harbor area up there. Together with the partners in the different countries in the project, we started to map how is regulation going on and how is the power market organized in the different countries. And it was interesting to see that in fact it is possible to simplify the regulations and the roles how this market is organized. And we ended up with all the traditional power markets are organized in 6 different basic roles. And this is roles which is organized and regulated when it comes to the electrical part and also with the financial and fiscal part. However, when we are now moving over to a more local market with PEDs and positive energy districts, with the local generation and energy efficiency and also trade or flexibility, it is in fact possible to set up some kind of a local market that contains only 4 different basic roles. And this is crucial to understand how we should address regulation in a local market that is working for a PED process.
And we did this together with 7 countries, all the 7 countries involved in positive city exchange, and we mapped out how the regulation was at the moment, and then we made a gap analysis based on this. So all that evidence came out with this solution, this experience that we can go for 4 roles.
It's a simplified regulation and new incentives, in fact. And it tried to extract some challenges here when it comes to, and obstacles when it comes to regulation. How we have experienced, what we have experienced so far in our work. And city planners and building owners, they must be educated to understand what is a local energy system about. It's very crucial.
And new opportunities that comes along with it.
Yeah, and on the opposite side, the regulator must be educated to understand what is the motivation behind a positive energy block and what is the incentives. Very interesting discussions going on there. And what about the DSOs, the distribution system operators all over Europe? They have tariffs, they have regulations that they are working based on. And it's also interesting here to train them to understand that even electricity distribution tariffs can support energy transition if they are changed and made more innovative and up to date. And number 4, that is also hard to work out a precise description of incentives for local markets to the different local market roles to support a positive energy block process. That's also something new that we have experienced. And number 5, sector coupling, because you know you have district heating and we have electricity, and we have experienced that this represents 2 different cultures, in fact, when it comes to understanding of energy transition and how we should set up innovation and technology and regulation for a positive energy block. Flexibility. Everybody these days are talking about flexibility and flexibility markets. But it's very important to be able to move from a prototype to, in fact, large-scale flexibility markets here, because more flexibility must be managed as a commodity that serves the positive energy block. This is possible, but still it's a very early phase. So the established PED, the next question is, how will regulation influence the operational phase? Because even within a PED, you will have a grid, you will have bottlenecks and different kind of challenges when it comes to electrical grid, and this must also be regulated for an operational phase. And the interesting thing here is also to quantify how a positive energy block in fact can postpone investments in the local grid, and in fact have a positive impact of the DSO businesses. And here it's very interesting to look into this draft report that is presented on the right-hand side here about electricity distribution tariffs from CER, Council of European Energy Regulators. Very interesting reading.
So after we've done the mapping and the gap analysis on the deliverable that we have done so far in Positive City Exchange when it comes to regulation, we designed a handbook, which is this one, that all cities can use, and we have started to use it ourselves. So now we stand between number 2 and 3 on the pink level here, and it comes all from going from a energy block and how can we come to the positive energy block in the future. And then it's obviously clear that we need to, the technology is there, and we have also come as far as number 4 when it comes to the technology and what we can be developed in Trondheim. But what is crucial when it comes to the handbook and regulation is to have a good dialogue early on with the regulator, and we have started that already, to be able to get the dispensations that the project needs in Trondheim, so we can test out the solutions, and then we can learn from other projects also how they can do it later on, and we can give out our knowledge and how we have done this so far. So now we are soon applying for dispensations, and we have a project group working together to make sure that our DSO is on board together with us, and the regulator is on board, and we're having good discussions when it comes to solutions.
And we also have a software solution which is on a prototype level to make optimal resource design and grid operation.
Klaus and Marit, just to mention, there are 2 minutes left.
Thank you.
Yep.
A basic thing is that all buildings within a positive energy block still will have a DSO grid agreement, a connection to the grid. It's also important to state that all customers within a positive energy block should be free to also to choose among power suppliers in the open market. But on the top of this, it is possible to set up a flexibility market or a local energy market with use of local demand response, local generation, and storage on the top. And the regulation that we see that is very important to further develop is on the top, from the top level and down towards from a top-down approach to this triangle.
So now we're working on 3 dimensions. It is about the dispensations that I mentioned. It's when it comes to this contribute in the EU marketplace, the EIP SCC, with our knowledge, and also to get insights from others that have done some similar work that we're doing. And we see that the incentives is not in order when it comes to regulation. So we see that in the longer run, we need to change regulation through national legislation as well. And for us, as others have discussed already, we do this together with the university, businesses, the city, and the citizens, because we think that then we can get much more insight and better solutions to become a PED in the future. And this is the work we've done so far. It's a lot of national and international interest has received so far.
So thank you for your attention. That's it.
Thank you, Marit and Klaus, for these interesting insights from the Positive City Exchange project and the role of regulation. Our final speaker for today is Samuli Rine from the city of Oulu. He will share with us some experiences from the Making City project in Oulu. Samuli, the floor is yours.
Yes, thanks, and hello everybody from Finland also. Yes, I tell something briefly about the project, or actually I tell about the techniques inside the project and some problems and solutions perhaps. So our project is making city, and it's quite like the same Horizon project as was presented earlier in earlier presentations. So we are 2 Lighthouse Cities, Oulu and Groningen, and 6 followers in different parts of Europe. And also the sums and last of the project are quite the same than in previous one. But let's see. Here perhaps. I'll try to change the slide.
It takes a couple of seconds before they move forward.
Yeah. Okay, now hopefully I pressed it sometime, so hopefully it stays here for a while. Yeah, but here you can see one vision for district heating in Oulu in 2050, and this is an example of the kind of energy transition in Finnish style. And here are the possible energy sources. So we have now built a new combined heat and power plant which replaces the older ones. Actually, one older one is still going until 2035. But this you see in the picture below of the slide, it starts now in some months, and it has a fuel effect of some 200 megawatts. So it's, well, what do you compare it, but for CHP internationally it's quite big. And the fuel, it's in the first place it's wood and peat, but in 2035 it will be 90% wood. And the rest of the district heating comes from industry. This is pulp mill you see in the picture. It's in Oulu. It's a kind of waste heat from there. And then on the right corner, there's an exhaust air heat pump under installation in the container, actually, as you see. And I think that it's possible that heat pumps, they cover, say, 35%, or it can be more. But when we take into account the effect of the new CHP plant and what is left of this and the industry, it's about 35%. And one can say, when giving a, say, simplified version, the electricity for the heat pumps, it comes from windmills, which you can see in the middle of the picture. They are located, say, 80 kilometers from Oulu, to the north of Oulu. They are 4 megawatt mills here. And well, actually the situation is fine in that sense that in regional level, we have a kind of a positive energy region. So when we account together wood, wind and solar, and then there's also hydropower here, we can have every hour actually total self-sufficiency. Of course, in practice, it's not exactly so, but in principle so. But of course, when we get into district, in our case in Finland, because the sun doesn't shine in winter time, then it's actually all the time we cannot be relied only in district heat, district energy production. So we have to use something outside the district, but inside the region, namely wind and wood. And this kind of system, it's not expensive. Of course, it costs something, and it's more expensive than if you have coal, for example, in a price of 10 euros per megawatt. This system is more expensive, but still the energy price for the final customer, it's quite the same than is it now. So I think it's, in that sense at least, it's socially sustainable also. And try to the next slide. Take some seconds. Okay, here actually transport, it's in minor role in our project, but I take this an example of the real energy efficiency, in my opinion, which is cycling. And in Oulu, we are a cycling city in Finnish scale, and so cycling share is 17%, and we try to get it even higher, and that's quite high if you remember that we have a proper winter here still. So this is one side of sustainability also, and in my opinion traffic is very difficult because well, electric cars may be fine, but even they require a lot of materials and some metals for the batteries, and the extraction of those, it's very harmful to environment. So yeah, this is the best way to handle it, namely cycling and walking and public transport also. Again, some time takes. Yes, and here are some questions around the issues we are handling in the project. So in practice, we are trying to find the most feasible heat sources for heat pumps, and they may be many. We here in our demo, we try exhaust air from ventilations, and which is more exotic, maybe district heating return water. It depends on the district heating coupling if it's useful or not. Here it is because we have a flue gas scrubber in the combined heat and power plant, and we can get a flue gas cooler. So this is a kind of a distributed heat pump system, and maybe quite cool solution. And of course you can take heat out of ambient air even in Finland, because the heat pumps nowadays, they are quite good, and even better if you have many stages on those, and from ground of course, and from cooling in summertime. And I think that by combining all of these, you can get quite a good of heat pump system, so it can fulfill the purpose of giving extra heat when you have a lot of wind production. And then one question or challenge may be that, as I said, the winter in Finland, it's quite harsh still here in north at least. So we don't get a lot of sunshine, and there's a lack of energy in winter time. Well, actually the windmills produce more in winter than in summer, which is very good. But we need to somehow fill the gaps left from wind production, and that may be one problem. But with the system I presented, it's possible. It's well possible. And then I wrote here urban sprawl, which in Finland I think it's not very bad compared to, for example, USA. But however, if all the grocery stores and shops, they are concentrated in big malls, it increases the traffic, and that's a bad thing in my opinion. It increased the consumption of everything. And then there is a problem that, well, the consumption of everything, it's wanted to be increased, and that's perhaps that's a part of a different discussion, but that's eating and having to take cake, saving the cake at the same time. And then one kind of soft issue or non-technical issue is that polarization and identity policy as one part of that, as you see in the global incidents. That they may be a big problem, since people may be against everything green because of the political opinions, and it has nothing to do with the issues itself. It's just you have to have an opposite stance than your counterpart in the other side of the politics. That's a problem, and that's emotions, of course. That's not technique. And then one related to general consumption is that there's still quite a large urge and measurements for quantity, and I think it's far better to emphasize on quality, but it's difficult to measure, and that's one practical abstract problem. Well, solutions to those, as I mentioned, testing and demonstrating heat pumps, as we do here in Making City project, heat storages. We try here, of course, the traditional hot water storages, we use those, but also we try here phase change materials as a storage. And then in Finnish conditions, photovoltaics on facade on vertical plane, they are very good solutions since they produce more in autumn and spring when it's more needed than in summertime, when electricity is more needed. And the control systems that self-clear. I don't go to that more deep, but it's clear. Yeah. 2 minutes still, or
2 minutes left. Yeah.
Yes, good. And then, as I told you, I think that in Finnish conditions, and if we take a look at the regional level, we can do fine with combining wind, photovoltaics, and combined heat and power and hydropower. And it can be 100% renewable, but not in district. And if that's a problem in that context we are talking now, that's another issue. And then, for the traffic, as was told, the compact urban structure, it's very good solution if we can keep that. And in practice, that means that we try to keep the existing structure alive, which in, for example, in our district, demo district here, it's kind of, there's a risk of segregation, and we try to avoid that. So keep that alive. And then, of course, construct some new buildings there to keep it alive. And then what has a big impact on what people really do, even if they are laymen or politicians or whoever, what is perceived as a normal by a peer group. That's very, very important. And this concerns quite everybody. And this shows way how to proceed. And legislation. Actually, I think the legislation situation in Finland, that's very good. One which it's a little bit barrier is electricity tax, but there are coming that kind of changes that, for example, electricity for big heat pumps in district heating networks, it's not taxated so much, and it's a very welcome change if it's going to be there. And I think it is, because the Finnish government for now, it's quite green, one can say. So that was all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuli, for these insights and in the main challenges you are facing and suggesting some solutions to us. With all the information we just got from these interesting pitches, we will now continue to the next part of this webinar. In the chat, you can find a link which will direct you to one of the breakout rooms. In breakout room number 1, we will elaborate on the PED definition and certification work and also discuss the set plan. Han, our first speaker of today, will be the moderator for this session. Christoph will also be present in this session. In breakout room 2, we will address challenges and barriers to building PEDs on the ground. We will discuss regulatory bottlenecks and alternative financing schemes. I will be moderating the discussion in the second breakout room. Rudy, Marit, Klaus, and Samuli will join this session as well. We are 5 minutes behind schedule, so we will take only 15 minutes to have a discussion in the breakout rooms with both speakers and the audience. In order to guide this online session in a good way, I would like to ask everyone to limit the duration of your interventions. So please try to bring your argument in a concise way so that we can allow several people to share their opinion. All participants in this webinar should remain muted in the GoToWebinar session in case that would change, and leave the GoToWebinar session open on their computer. In the chat, you can find the links to the breakout rooms if everything went well. Please select the one you would like to attend, and in 15 minutes we will get back to this session to wrap up our discussion and maybe answer some questions from the audience. I don't think there will be much time left, but as said before, all the questions we receive in the chat box, we will address them and get back to you via email. So you can now enter the breakout rooms. So welcome back, everyone. In the second breakout room, we discussed about the regulatory bottlenecks that have to be overcome, and I will just briefly wrap up. There was mentioned the possibility to experiment with regulations by the use of exemptions, which might be very valuable to test certain things. The current situation is not sufficiently supportive, and also regulation should be simplified in order to have people on board. There was also given an example from the Atelier project where where multiple apartments could be connected to the grid through a single connection, and this could result in a better business case because they had lower capacity charges if they could lower the peaks below a certain the peaks of electricity consumption and injection below a certain level. And then we also had some insights from the EU level. So these discussions are still needed related to regulation. The renovation wave, which is part of the Green Deal, would give plenty of opportunity to guide an integrated discussion on this topic. It's also important that silo work is overcome and that people working on regulation actually work together. Then a second topic we addressed was related to financing. So very briefly, where should the money come from? How should we finance positive energy districts, because they require quite some investments. Legislation was mentioned as a facilitating factor and could play an important role in getting the money to these projects. Then we also it was also highlighted that pension funds are looking more into the housing market, and so this might be relevant for positive energy districts as well. And we also got the feedback from the investors network during the EIP-SCC investment forum, these discussions that took place there, and we learned that it's in that there is quite some interest from the financing world, from the investors, to invest in long-term investments, for which, of course, positive energy districts fit perfectly. So there is also a role for innovative financing and procurement solutions. So I will stop here with the wrap up of discussion 2, breakout room 2. Han, maybe you can give a short overview of what was discussed in your breakout room.
Yes, sure. So there were really some interesting insights popping up. We mainly discussed the system boundaries and the role of certification in case. And one of the main remarks that came first was that this can become very complex from a technical point of view, and hard to grasp. And so we need never to lose out of sight our target groups, who are citizens and inhabitants, and the fact that the PED is something which is approachable for them and something that they can buy in on, that they want to embrace. So that's more important than being extremely strict on the boundaries. It was also said that we need not only to keep it simple, but also scalable. I mean, it should be not so complex that it's really hard to copy it. It should stay natural. And something else that came up was that it's also evolutive. It's about complex urban projects, and they start somewhere and they go through a life cycle, and they evolve to something which becomes more positive energy, balanced, but it's not there from one moment to another. So it's also of getting on board of a process. And on the other hand, if you would say like you really want to certify, the first question is, yes, but who is asking for certification? And probably we know certification for buildings like LEED, BREEAM, and so forth. So probably for single buildings, that's something that is okay. Like it can be okay for products, but living neighborhoods maybe are something that we don't necessarily need to certify. Whom do we certify for? Is it to obtain finance? Is it to obtain political approval? So there's not directly evidence that we would need it. So who it is for, the certification, and what it is for. The other thing with certification is that evidently, because it's a complex thing, it might be that we start to use tricks and stretch up boundaries and find inventive ways of accounting of energy and so forth, just for the sake of certification, and that's not the goal of a PED. Another interesting proposal was that, and then we come in the area of virtual PEDs, it's that if you look from a wider perspective, well, it does make sense to integrate with your production that goes somewhere in the countryside or on the sea or whatsoever. And the example was giving for a typical Finnish and Scandinavian situation where many people have a summer house in the mountains or on the fjords, and they have PV there. And actually they want to account the PV from the summer house in their city apartment, and it totally makes sense. So we also learned that, for example, distributed energy communities and local energy communities are really important for PEDs, and legislation is also starting to evolve in that way. Whether it is PV from the summer house or it's your share in a wind turbine on the North Sea, well, it does make sense to get that in the energy system. And this points also to the same kind of flexible approach, open approach, which makes it something that lives and brings in creativity and people's engagement in very different forms. So I think on these 20 minutes we got a lot of insights, and I think we can really go on with this in the next steps of the work that is being done by GPI Urban Europe and ERA joint program. So yeah, that's the harvest of our session.
Thank you, Han. We are approaching the end of this webinar. We had one question in the chat box addressed to Marit and Klaus, and the question is where the handbook that was referred to can be found. So Marit or Klaus, maybe you can just mention where we can find the link, and we will also maybe include it then in the emailing afterwards. You're still muted. Not yet. I'm trying to unmute you as well. Yes, it should be okay now. No, not yet. Okay, I suppose we include the link to the handbook in the email that will be sent to all attendees. Okay, I see you nodding. Thank you for that. So if there would be any other questions, I suggest they are sent to info@smartcities-infosystem.eu, and then we will definitely address them the best we can. Right. We will end the webinar here, and as said before, we will get back to you via email to address these unanswered questions. We will also send a link to the recording of this presentation slides and all information about upcoming activities. Later this year, the Smart Cities Information System will be present at the Smart City Fair Urbis 2020 in Brno on 2nd and 3rd of September. And we will also be represented at the European Week of Regions and Cities, which will take place from 12 until 15 September. But before that, I wish you all an enjoyable summer. We hope you enjoyed this webinar and look forward to meet you again.